Everyone has untapped potential. It doesn't interest me what you do for a living. I want to know what you ache for, and if you dare to dream of meeting your heart's longing. It doesn't interest me how old you are. I want to know if you will risk looking like a fool for love, for dreams, for the adventure of being alive. It doesn't interest me what planets are squaring your moon. I want to know if you have touched the center of your own sorrow, if you have been opened by life's betrayals or have become shriveled and closed from fear of further pain. I want to know if you can sit with pain, mine or your own, without moving to hide it or fade it or fix it. I want to know if you can be with joy, mine or your own, if you can dance with wildness and let ecstasy fill you to the tips of your fingers and toes without cautioning us to be careful, realistic, or to remember the limitations of being a human. It doesn't interest me if the story you're telling me is true. I want to know if you can disappoint another to be true to yourself. If you can bear the accusation of betrayal and not betray your own soul. I want to know if you can be faithful and therefore trustworthy. I want to know if you can see beauty even if it's not pretty every day, and if you can source your life from God's presence. I want to know if you can live with failure, yours and mine, and still stand on the edge of a lake and shout to the silver moon, yes. It doesn't interest me where you live or how much money you have. I want to know if you can get up after the night of grief and despair, weary, bruised to the bone, and do what needs to be done for the children. It doesn't interest me who you are, how you came to be here. I want to know if you will stand in the center of the fire with me and not shrink back. It doesn't interest me where or what or with whom you have studied. I want to know what sustains you from the inside when all else falls away. I want to know if you can be alone with yourself and if you truly like the company you keep in the empty moments. Oriah Mountain Dreamer, Native American elder. Welcome to The Lost Traveler. I'm your host, Henry Cameron Allen, and I am here today with leadership performance coach, trainer, and speaker extraordinaire, Angela Brown. Welcome, Angela. It's so great to have you here on The Lost Traveler. Welcome.
Well, my question is, when can your mom and I come visit you? So are they letting us in to that beautiful spot? Or
Americans are not allowed into Europe at the moment.
Oh, no.
Because,
I know, but they haven't lifted that yet. They're still scared of us, huh?
Yeah.
I get it.
For good reason.
I get it. I get it.
What is going on where you are? Are you in Scottsdale right now?
I'm in Scottsdale. We were a hot spot for the longest for this. And the governor just started cracking down on all of these youngsters at these nightclubs and said, no, we're closing the clubs back down. Right. So they did. And within a week and a half, the numbers shot down dramatically. So we are one of the top 3 best places in the country right now and have been holding that position for the last almost month.
Good. Is that, you mean Scottsdale or Arizona in general?
Arizona in general, particularly Scottsdale too. I mean, just all over. Yeah, we've only had like 400 confirmed cases in the whole state.
Wow.
Last week, which is amazing. So, yeah, I think that we just continue to be, vigilant and, being smart and keeping the youngsters at bay. I think we'll be good.
So much of this is common sense and, this is a very fragile virus that can be killed with soap and water. I don't understand why it is such a hard thing for people to grasp. And, you
I
know,
know. I know. I
glo-
know.
globally.
It's yeah. So I mean, I've been, my husband is works for a huge healthcare company, and I listen to some of the medical directors. They talk about this virus, and I mean, the numbers are still showing that. I just think that people just aren't smart with keeping their hands, washing your hand, like you said, soap and water, wash your hands, wear your mask, be safe, keep the elderly away, keep them at bay, and just do smart things that you would do with anyone in your family who had a flu. You would keep them. You would not want to expose them to people with the flu. You would want to protect them. You don't want to go around them without protecting, having masks and things. And so I just think that just people were just too cavalier about this whole thing and just didn't take it seriously. And
What
then now they look up and there it is.
do you think that it is because of leadership not appearing to take it as seriously, especially at the beginning, or what do you attribute that to? I mean, you work with a lot of people, different ages. You work in the corporate sector, all of that, and you see, like I do in my work, you see a breadth of the human spectrum, right? What do you think this is about right now? Well, not just the virus, but everything. Big question.
Well, yeah, that's a question that has lots of implications because, as you know, especially here in the States, there is a lot of political unrest
Yeah.
around this topic.
Yeah.
And, you know, at the risk of stepping out and alienating half of my client base, I have learned to temper my response because it is so emotionally charged. And I could certainly give my logic around what I think is going on from a standpoint of the virus and also how I think leadership has handled it. I don't think there's an easy solution. I don't think as a leader you can make a decision that impacts everyone in the country and it's going to be a successful decision because I'm looking at it from, I mean, it doesn't matter, even politics aside, I'm just saying that it would be very challenging for me had I been in that situation to make a decision that encompasses everyone in the country and to mandate that and not infringe on people's rights. And I think that's why I think the president delegated or relegated the responsibility to the states because constitutionally, I don't think the president has the right or the authority to mandate. However, some people would say that, well, when you're talking about so many lives that are at risk, I think it would take a chance. I mean, who cares about that when you're talking about people's lives do something. Leadership is not that cut and dry.
When you're talking about a pandemic and a state of emergency, and you look comparatively at the numbers of cases, the numbers of deaths, and the way it's been spreading around America, it's tops in the world, second only to nobody. Brazil is coming up behind, and it seems that people have it in check for the most part. It goes up and down a bit, but I think those of us who are in this business of coaching and mentoring and all of that, we have to think about, and that's what this podcast is all about. What are the tools that we need right now? What do we need to pioneer this time? Not only the time that we're in this moment, but this uncertain future globally.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say are the top skills that we need to be cultivating and focusing on right now?
Are you talking in the leadership or are you talking specifically, what are you speaking about?
Well, I mean, I've done episodes on self-leadership. I've done a lot of different topics. And, with each guest, it's sort of, it brings another piece of the puzzle together. When you are
Yeah.
talking about your specialty and your work as a trainer and a speaker and a coach, in the world that you occupy, what are you seeing? What are you seeing that other people may not be getting yet? What can we offer up right now?
So let's like take it from a leadership perspective. And I do a lot of work in the area of personal leadership, and that's where you can't lead others until you learn to lead your own life, and getting to know yourself intimately and understanding the reason why you exist. Why are you here? What are you trying to accomplish? What's your purpose? What's your passion? What's your mission? And I can ask leaders that question and they'll give me a lot of rote answers, things that they've heard or a combination of different people who they admire. But when I ask them to really peel back the layers and to get down to the core of their true belief and what they stand for and what they're willing to die for, it's challenging for them. And so what I do in my work is I help people get down deep to the core of who they are and what they want their legacy to be in the long run. And so once you determine, which sometimes it takes 6 months to a year to even unearth all of that, because we've been so mired in life and we don't even hear our own voice anymore. We don't even hear our own passion anymore. And I think it's important, if we're going to have the energy and to lead and have the vision to lead, we have to know who we are at the core. And leaders, when we're making decisions and we don't know what we stand for and have authenticity around that, then we're going to waver and vacillate back and forth on principle. Now, I'm not talking about making value judgments, because we all have to own who we are. We have to all own our belief, and we have to be strongly convicted in our beliefs and what we believe in. And I think that's what people are looking for from us as leaders, are people who are solid and are convicted by what they believe in. And I'm not saying that it has to be one belief or one value or the other. I'm saying that the leader has to own who they are and really use that as the foundational launching pad for whatever it is they want to do, particularly as it pertains to leading other people.
And we're going to take a brief pause right now to hear a word from our sponsor. Listen up. How can a sock, a patch, or an insole help so many people live their best lives pain-free, balanced, and strong? Scientifically speaking, there is a proprietary pattern embedded in Vox, socks, and insoles that touches specific neuropoints and other receptors in the metatarsal or ball of the foot, creating homeostasis or balance in the brainstem. This prime real estate in your brain is responsible for automatic functions like balance, stability, strength, power, range of motion, flexibility, mobility, and so much more. The Vox patch works in the same way, but it uses receptors on other parts of your body to elicit the same response. The moment your receptors touch this Vox technology, it opens up communication pathways throughout your unique system, allowing you to become instantly stronger, more balanced, have less pain, and increased range of motion. In short, Vox technology helps optimize the brainstem, allowing your body to self-regulate and self-heal. Vox products are non-electrical, non-invasive, have no negative side effects, no metals, magnets, or plastics, and are drug-free. Results are instant, scientifically proven, and time-tested. For a limited time, buy any 2 items and get 1 pair of socks or thin insoles free, a savings of up to $50. Contact Diane Dinkmeyer at voxlife.com for more info. That's Diane Dinkmeyer at voxlife.com. You'll be glad you did. I just posted something recently on Facebook about I'm not really interested in finding out what you're against. Let me know what you're for. And I think that's a
Yes.
huge question right now. I love that you ask that question, what would you die for? Because that is what we're talking about in our time. We're talking about policing. We're talking about racism. We're talking about this virus, the risks that people are willing to take. What are you willing to die
Yes.
for? And this comes down to that line, right? So I think that's really,
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love what you said when you said, what do you stand for? What are you willing to live and die for? What are you for, not what you're against? And I think that we become so disoriented and just so distracted by being angry and being emotional around people who are maybe against what we believe, that we have failed to become introspective. And let's talk about what we can do to make it better based on who we are and what we stand for and our belief. I think that we have misaligned our focus. I think our focus should be on as leaders on us. What can we do? And if you don't know who you are and what you stand for, it's going to be very difficult to lead and to be. First of all, to be a leader worth your salt, you have to be introspective and have the courage of introspection. No one likes to look at themselves. They want to look at others and blame, where I think we have an amazing opportunity now to go inward and to figure out how we can be better so that we can lead.
My grandmother had this great saying. She used to say, honey, when you point a finger at somebody else, you got 3 pointed back at yourself. Right? And don't you
Absolutely.
think that this virus, this little fragile virus that has taken the world to its knees, has given us such a gift, this opportunity to be introspected, to isolate from one another, to give Mother Nature a chance to have a spa weekend and just take a break and recoup. And, my goodness, we look at everything from the fires in Australia last year to what's going on in the West this year, which I hope isn't close to you where you are, because I know Arizona's it. There are all of these, it seems like there's this cleansing happening right now in the earth and in humanity. And are we taking enough stock in that? Are we able to, as humanity at large, able to see that? I know some of us are, but how do we get to that point? How do we get from point A to point B? If we have listeners who are struggling with finding what they are for because they're deaf from all the vitriol that's out there and hearing on social media what everyone's against, how do we get there? How do we get them there who aren't?
Well, I've always had the saying that, I don't want to drag someone along in the process. I think it's an individual choice. You have to know that you're ready and want to be ready for transformation and to step off of the treadmill and to press pause and to take some time and realize the importance of that. And so, even though I'm a coach and I have lots of people that I work with, I never want to drag people along. If I have to pull them along or drag them along, then it's not the right time.
Right.
And so we all have to come to that time in our life where we feel like it's necessary. But the people who are ready, I always start with the question. I ask a lot of questions, and these are questions that I asked myself at a point in time in my life. And I was going through a transition, thinking, what's next for me? What's my purpose? What's what's on the agenda. And I had to ask the question, so what do I truly value? If I had to list the top 5 areas of my life that I truly valued, and I'm talking about things that would be more tangible. I would say like family, my faith, my career, things of that nature. If I had to list those things, and so there's no right or wrong, good or bad. It's just whatever. It could be my dog. It could be deep sea fishing. It could be whatever it is for me, because I think that that's part of the authenticity. You're not trying to live someone else's expectation. You're just trying to discover what's authentically you, and so you have to gain clarity on what you value. And it's more difficult than it sounds, because I also ask the question, now I want you to, once you list those things, now I want you to prioritize them. And what's most important to you, 1 through 5. But then it goes even deeper.
Yeah.
And then I ask the question, so now that you have listed your top 5 things that you value, or areas in your life that you value, and you prioritize those things, now I want you to tell me how much time you actually engage in those areas right now. So if you had a pie 100%, you broke it. It doesn't have to be like 2.5%, but just a whole number, what is that percentage? And so people are usually surprised to see that the areas of their life that they say are the most important, they spend the least amount of time engaged in. I think that was interesting, because we say that we value a certain thing in our mind, yet our actions tell us a totally different story. So there seems to be this misalignment, or we don't have integrity around those areas that we say we value. So it's a huge wake-up call for people, because if you can't walk the talk, not only is your mind thinking, gee, there's some incongruence here, but there's also people are watching you, and they're saying you espouse to one thing, yet your actions are telling a different story. And so it's difficult to have people follow you if they can't trust what you say is true.
Well, and I think a lot of that comes from our foundation and the skills that we glean throughout our lives. So many, I would even venture to say, a large percentage of us globally are walking around with very deficient toolkits in meeting our own lives and in meeting the world as individuals with integrity. And, when I talk to clients about a very similar question that I ask, and I too experience people struggling finding that list, especially a short list, let alone a long one, of the things that matter to them. What do you want is the question that I pose. And that's the hardest list for many people to come up with. I say, all right, then here's what we're going to do. Make the list of the things you don't want.
Mm-hmm.
That's an easy list, right?
Mm-hmm.
Go down the list, everything you can think of. And usually it's about a dozen to begin with. And once they've established that on the opposite side of the paper, I say, now write the opposite of each one of those things. And there's a foundational list that you can start from. It's a very easy, very practical tool. And then tear the paper in half and burn the other, the negative stuff, all get it off the planet, and then focus on these things that you now know that you want, right? If it's the opposite of what you don't want, and start there. That list is changeable. It's not written in blood or stone. And that simple act of recognizing and identifying what it is that you value, you're absolutely right. That's the foundation of it all. And we don't get that. Why do you think that is? At home or at school? In your experience?
Definitely we don't do a lot of this in school. There's a narrative that we're supposed to follow. There's a track we're supposed to follow
The box we're
and
supposed to fit into.
fit into. Exactly. And so it doesn't leave much room for authenticity and creativity. And I think that when I speak with my clients, a lot of them are, these are folks who are in their 50s and 60s. They've had a fair amount of success. And now they're looking at their lives retrospectively and they're saying, gee, what's next for me? This is how I've lived my life thus far. And I really don't feel like I've been in my sweet spot. What is it that I really want to do? What is it? And to your point, yes, you can list those things, the things that you don't want to do, but I go through this process where it's almost like pulling back the curtain and seeing what's there after you have asked yourself the questions about your values, of course, and then you go even deeper in that by asking, so you say that you value these areas, so why do you value your dog so much? I mean, why do you value? And so it's one thing to say it, but to actually go deep and to write a narrative around the significance of that value in your life is what I call adding roots to your conviction.
Yes.
Because the more you can define it, the deeper your conviction and the more solidly grounded you'll be as a leader of leading your own life.
And we'll be right back right after this.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, we absorb, right? We absorb everything around us from childhood, from learning how to speak, learning how to walk, learning how to interact, all those essential skills like communication and self-care and grief. We learn by observing the world around us. Where did you grow up? Where did you glean your roots?
My roots are in St. Louis, Missouri, right in the middle of the Midwest,
Yes.
middle of America.
Wow. Do
Yes.
you know much about your family history? There's been a really interesting, I talk about this a lot, a fairly new science called epigenetics, where they're understanding that our genetic makeup carries within it the memories of our ancestors.
That's a fascinating thing. Yes, I've been kind of looking into that myself on a personal level, but yes, it's very interesting.
Well, I think that's important in discovering your roots and where things stem from within you. To even go back to your own personal biography, go way back. How far back can you go? I mean, what a great challenge, and the tools that we have available to us in this day and age. Use them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I know I can go back. I mean, I can go back. I mean, my, gosh, we have roots from, and I'm African American, but I have roots back as far as Africa and Germany and all over. We have just like a melting pot in our family, especially on my father's side.
Yeah.
And I know that my mother's side can trace her roots back, to slavery. We couldn't find out where exactly in Africa we came from, but yeah, it seems to be a melting pot overall. But even more recently, I can tell you that I was raised by two divorcees, two women who were very scorned women in very, very abusive relationships who needed to get out of those relationships. And I grew up in their transition, especially my mother's transition from being a young, afraid woman with two children and an abusive husband, and how she had to grow up quickly on her own to be independent, and me watching that. And I'm sure there was an awful lot of stress that was imposed on her. She's still living and doing great, but I just have seen her transformation since I was a little girl until now. And the just enormous amount of stress and I can't even imagine having young children in an abusive relationship and having a high school education. So how then do you seek out those, I guess, to me, not just support, but just the mindset? How do you garner the mindset to keep going and to have a vision? How do you create a vision when you're bombarded with so much negativity and strife and especially at a young age? And for her to do that was just phenomenal. And so I think I have inherited my propensity I have a sensitivity to stressors. I know that, but I also have inherited the ingenuity to try to mitigate it in any way I can too, because I am aware of it. So it is important to, so I think that epigenetics is very important, and good and bad. You kind of take it all with you.
That's a really important point too, because we do, have to look at both sides of the coin, and, your mother inherited from her mother, and her mother inherited from her mother. And you look back at Black slavery in America over 400, whenever people were brought here. And,
yes.
And, generation to generation, what has had to be carried and gleaned and brought forward, it's amazing to me, and a beautiful thing to me, to see people rising above, to see Black folks standing up and saying, this is who I am. This is in my blood. This is in my DNA, and I feel,
and we're resilient. I mean, to me,
you.
I think mindset is so important. I mean, I am not one to adopt the victim mentality, because I wasn't taught that. It wasn't modeled for me. Yes, was life hard? Did I see extreme abuse that a 5-year-old little girl should not have seen? Absolutely. But I didn't see anyone around me in my immediate family, like my mom and my grandmother, who were the two most important influences in my life. They never were woe is me. They could have blamed their circumstance and situation. There was plenty to blame, but they chose not to do that. People say you're always so positive no matter what you're going through. It's like, because I choose to take on that mindset.
Transcend it. We transcend
Absolutely.
it. And I learned from my mother, who you know very well.
Who I know and love and I adore, yes.
And I have to say that, growing up the way I did, growing up overseas, I didn't grow up in America, even though I was born there. I am eternally grateful that my mother raised me and my siblings in our foundation years. There were key years of development where I wish it had been otherwise, where she had been there, because I was 6, I think, when my parents divorced, and we were ping pong balled all over the world, and it was very dramatic and very scary and lonely, and all of these issues that come up, certainly within me, and I know within her. She never copped to the attitude of victimhood.
No.
He transcended it. And when we came back together in the spirit of love and family, when I was finishing high school, our relationship just has blossomed over the years. And I've watched her go from, really having to raise herself in a lot of ways.
Yes.
I think that's a gift that we have too, as human beings, that our individual selves, each one of us contains an inner child. And at some point we have to start parenting ourselves and be the parent we didn't get to have sometimes, Absolutely.
And sometimes, Henry, I get so frustrated by people's good intentions. People do have good intentions when they want to particularly take African-American children.
Yeah.
And they want to treat them as victims. And I know people have good intentions, but they want to say, oh, this poor kids, they don't have this home life, and they are, and all this is going on, and which is so true. And I understand that, but I think that we do kids, not just African-American kids, but all kids, a disservice if we start to treat them as victims, and how they need to somehow be rescued and be saved. Now, I'm not saying that there should not be support mechanisms in place to help them succeed, to help kids succeed. But when you constantly hear this narrative, you're a victim, they don't want you to have, they are against you, subconsciously that has
an effect on you where you think that you don't have the wherewithal because all the cards are stacked against you. So therefore, it would be very difficult for you to succeed. And I have always been of the mindset to where you meet people where they are, you understand their pain, you empathize with the pain, but you never lower the bar of expectation. And you always expect that people can learn and grow and understand how to go out to learn how to feed themselves, because nowhere in America, I mean, there's always opportunity to do something. And I have seen it. My husband grew up in a housing project in St. Louis, where he saw gun wars and drug wars, and he remembers the people. He called them the do-gooders, who would come into the neighborhoods and they would come in and clean up. You know, the churches, they come in and do a cleanup day, or they drop off food and clothes, but then they'd never see them again. Right. You know, it's the people who really weren't vested in the community, but it was just a way for them to come and do a feel good, do a happy for the day. And but there were people who were there. There were the priests back in the day when the Catholic Church was in these neighborhoods, and there were some people who were really vested, who lived in the areas, who came in there. They spent time with him and his brothers. They took him fishing. They did things, and it was just, he saw a different way of life. And same with me growing up. I saw a different way, because there were people who took the time to show me how to do things. They told me what it took to be successful. They didn't make excuses for me, but really gave me the tools. And so I never thought that I couldn't compete because of my skin color. I never thought that I was at a deficit. I never thought that, because you can ask your mom, it doesn't matter. I'll walk into a room. I don't care if I'm the only Black person. I will act like I own it. It's just how I've been raised. It's just what's been modeled.
No doubt that there are cards stacked against people of color and Indigenous people in this country. There's no doubt. You cannot look at your city, you cannot look at your neighborhood, you cannot look at the news without seeing it. And now it's on video. Now it's really laid out. And I have to think. I'm thinking about, because as a person who is born with the privilege of fair skin, which I believe is the currency that buys our privilege, is our lack of melanin, that what I can try and equate it to right now in time is when those planes hit the towers on 9/11, right? Mm-hmm. Nobody told children that wasn't happening over and over and over again. Nobody was telling children that wasn't happening every day. Nobody was telling young children who didn't know better or where it was that wasn't happening all over the world. And I have to wonder the ripple effect of that in young people today who are now adults trying to make their way through this world. And I wonder the same thing about young kids of color and Indigenous kids who are watching this play out in social media today and on the news without people telling them the history, without people telling them why.
Your generous sponsorship and individual support of the Lost Traveler podcast benefits the Lost Travelers Club, a charitable project under the fiscal sponsorship of United Charitable, a nonprofit 501c3 organization. The Lost Travelers Club focuses primarily on the needs of parents who have outlived their beloved children. We recently launched our new Brain Candy Project wing, providing art supplies to children still struggling with critical or terminal health-related conditions. We hope to raise enough funds to launch Brain Candy, an arts and literature magazine created by and for these young people. Find out more at www.braincandy.online. Thank you.
No, you're right. To your point that the messages that our children hear right now based on our current construct, even going back to 9/11, what are those? Because my kids were in middle school when that happened, and they have seen that. And it does change the perspective on how they see the world. And so I think that we do have to be careful because the mind dictates so much. Physiologically, emotionally, our ambition, our the way we see ourselves, our self-esteem, everything. And so I just think it's important that we help these kids navigate to protect their psyche around these things. I remember when my kids were young, I would go in their rooms every night and deconstruct all the garbage that they had picked up throughout the day, messages that they hear. The subconscious mind picks that up. And once you hear it within earshot, whether it's directed at you personally or someone else, you hear something, the moment you hear it, it's like, it goes somewhere and it goes into your subconscious. It's there floating somewhere. The moment you speak it, so someone tells this young kid, you know what, you're dumb. You're not going to amount to anything. Mm-hmm. The moment they hear it, it's now in their subconscious. The moment they speak it, it's now part of their consciousness. And it's also become part of their belief because when they speak it, it's there, and now it's part of their belief system. And right. then our actions are a manifestation of our beliefs. So, I mean, we have to be so careful about those messages. And so we have to be intentional as adults and teachers to make sure that we're deciphering all this negativity so that it's not used against our kids.
And that is not easy to do when we ourselves are meeting this for the first time in history. We don't have the tools to really understand how to deconstruct it for ourselves. How do we guide our children? And all of us, and I say our children, and that includes everyone who is of the age to be a parent, right? If you are in the parenting generation, absolutely, you have to look at all children as your children, because if you are interacting with them, even if it's walking through the grocery store, they're watching you for how to be in the world. They're looking at the choices of what you're picking off the shelf to feed the temple of your body, right? We are, all of us in the parent generation, responsible for learning for ourselves first. It's like putting the oxygen mask on your own face before you put it on the child. You have to be able to figure it out for yourself. That's why I'm doing this podcast. What are some practical tools that you have found with your clients that are helpful in the individual needing this, building up our toolkits, building up our integrity to be able to own our toolkits and sharing them with younger people today? Big question.
Again, that's why I love that you're a coach, and I love what I do as a leadership coach. Again, back to this whole personal leadership. You can't lead others until you first learn to lead your own life, because that's the integrity, that's the authenticity, all those things. That's the conviction. It's the courage of conviction. All those things emanate from the leader themselves, walking their walk, walking their talk every single day. So my biggest tool is to first have my personal leadership playbook, which I should go pull that out. It's a 30-page .ca that I have for myself that I take all of my clients through, and it reminds me in details my trajectory. I reverse engineer my legacy. It's like at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, what do I want people to remember me for? And so that's what we try to get to, is that vision, but then we bring it back into daily accountability steps. So if I say that I value my charity work, which is with, let's just say, with domestic violence, and what am I doing? What am I doing on a monthly basis or biweekly basis? Whatever I deem is necessary for me, is good for me. Am I being true to that? Am I consistently doing that if that's one of my core values? So that at the end of the day, there's no regrets. Did I engage in those activities? So as a coach, what I do is I hold people accountable to what they say they want to accomplish, not what I think is important or what society thinks is important, but what is quintessentially you? What is it that would make you feel like, yes, I have I have achieved success on my terms, and this is what it is. And so I think that living a life of integrity and being engaged in those daily activities that lead you to your vision is what it's about. So that's a tool for me. I don't judge my success on home run hits every day. I don't judge my success on the number of clients I get. I judge my success on, did I add value to someone's life today in some little way? That's something that's part of my value plan on my top 5. I want to add value to others every single day. And that's just for me. And I know that. So did I engage in that today? So I can give myself a gold star by each of my 5 action items. And I know that compounded effect over time is going to get me to where I want to go.
Yeah. I often, I don't work in the corporate sector at all. I'm working with people who really are at whatever phase of their life, whether they're a teen or in their 30s or in their 50s, just meeting this for the first time, developing their toolkit, finding the strength, finding the wisdom, and asking for help, empowering themselves to ask for help. And so, with that, these are the things that matter to me list. I actually have them folded up and put it in an Altoids tin and find a place in nature to bury it under a bush or a tree or something. Plant it in the earth. The act of planting it in the earth like a seed is a beautiful gesture. It connects you to the earth. It connects you to nature. And you have the power to plant that seed. And every time you achieve one of those things on your list, go dig it up, cross it off the list, fold it back up, put it back in the earth until the next thing you can cross off. And
I love that.
Thanks. I think that works for a lot of people who may not have the basic tools even developed enough to be able to know practically what to do. It's a gesture, and just like your dossier is a gesture, it's your garden. It's where you plant your seeds, right? And you have to prepare the soil. You can't just throw a seed on the ground and expect it's going to develop into a healthy plant. And you can't force the growth either, because if you do, you're going to have a weak plant. You have to understand climate, and you have to understand the nutrients that are required to grow that seed. And that's, that's the beginning. That's the beginning. And it starts in early childhood. It starts in education at home and in school. I think, again, this is a prime opportunity for us to develop new tools, new techniques to meet children in their foundation years. Your kids are now
wholeheartedly. Yeah. And my kids are grown ups now, 30. My daughter is the oldest. She's 30. She's a high school principal in the Urban Core, doing some great things with the charter school system in Kansas City, Missouri. Leader, great vision, great interracial school with different socioeconomic backgrounds. And these kids are just like a melting pot and just really doing high academic standards, high rigor, and no excuses. All kids can succeed with the right tools and the right opportunity. And it's just a great, great vision. But then I have my middle son, who's 28, he is in sales in Seattle, Washington, a food brokerage company, Cisco, and he's just doing fantastic. He has always worked with youth in basketball. He played Division I basketball, and he just loves empowering and equipping youth. He's the most disciplined guy you ever want to meet as far as daily disciplines. I think that's what keeps him on track and being so successful, is that he has that mindset. He breaks it up into small chunks. And then our youngest, Peyton, just graduated from Arizona State University. So he has a huge trajectory ahead of him. So, I mean, again, when my kids were small, and they knew me. I mean, I did walk the talk when it came to don't let circumstances define you. Life is hard. I mean, we had the conversation early on. I'm not trying to protect you from life's challenges, because they're going to happen. So it's going to be hard. You're going to be frustrated. You're going to be sad. You're going to be mad. But let me help you navigate. I don't want to remove the obstacles. I want to coach you around navigating those obstacles, because I can't always be there to help you to remove those things. So you're going to have to learn how to navigate. And they went through it early on. I wasn't the mom that was trying to, create this ideal scenario. They went through hell. Some of them, especially, bullying and some different things that my daughter went through in particular, being the only Black girl and mostly, private schools. And so I think that's what's giving her a lot of her passion for the underserved to this day, and to be a voice for the underserved because of what she went through. But, of course, we had to intervene on some situations that were just untenable for her at her age. But she had to learn how to speak up for herself and to advocate for herself early on in life. Whereas as a mom, it just kills you. As a parent, as a dad and mom, it just killed us to watch her go through it. But gosh, I look at her now as this amazing leader, and what she's doing in her vision. And I always say that, I'm glad that we let her know that there's pain early on and we equipped her to deal with it. Otherwise, she's going to be in therapy at age 60 wondering why she doesn't have any friends. It's just like one of those things where it's like you have to, the sooner, you can expose your kids to challenges, but then to help equip them to navigate those challenges to the other side is one of the best gifts that we've given our kids. And I go into public schools now. My daughter invites me into her schools and I take these kids, from not so good backgrounds. I came from that. I get it. And I take them through the whole personal leadership playbook. So what my corporate clients pay for, I give it to these kids for free. And I think that my corporate clients help to underwrite it because, and I want to get with these moms, these single moms in the urban core, take them through this process because no matter what their current situation is, they can create a vision for their life that's different. And so I want to empower people to look and to think about things differently.
21st century life skills warrant 21st century education. Every human being is born into a classroom, each of us given the same homework, the same core assignments. Personal care skills, emotional literacy, financial literacy, environmental literacy. These and other essential life skills are unique, learned and used by each of us every day of our lives. Indeed, they are the common thread in our humanity, core to individuals and the communities they construct, surviving and thriving. Raising the bar on life skills education for all. This is the mission of Parenting 2.0. Visit www.parenting2pt0.org for more information.
Absolutely. And I know that there are tools that I don't have in my kit to meet certain people, to meet certain situations. And that's why I'm so grateful for this platform, because I can bring in masters from every background, from every walk of life, every country, every culture. I have listeners in 16 countries now. And I have brought in...
That's fantastic.
And cultivated this community of master teachers who can come in and give just little practical tools that are universal, right? That we can meet. We talk about the African American experience. We talk about the Jewish American experience. It wasn't that long ago.
Yes.
Jews were marginalized in this country and treated as second-class citizens.
Absolutely.
The Irish.
There are people who are still living who can tell us.
Yeah.
What happened during the Holocaust. There are people who can tell us what happened during Jim Crow, my grandmother remembered the Ku Klux Klan coming up to her house as a young girl. She was born in 1922. She has passed away 4 years ago, but my kids were able to hear these stories firsthand. So We're not that far removed.
Well, and those stories are being lost, and it's really important that they are stoked and kept alive. That's one of the reasons I do folkloric theater with all ages. It's to get people bringing those stories, preserving and protecting the stories that are dying with the people that carry them. Some of them, all of those stories live in us. That's why we resonate with them so much. I can hear a story from somebody who is descended from African slaves who were brought here 400 years ago or however long.
Yes.
And through my DNA research, I've been able to find where my African ancestry is from way back, prehistory in Kenya and Tanzania.
Yeah.
Those tools are there.
Yes.
And that allows me to empathize and allows me to embrace in brother and sisterhood all people of this planet. It's a tiny planet, and we are all related. We are all of us related and relatable.
Yes, we are.
More importantly, we're relatable.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. And I was just doing this whole study on Africa with my son. My youngest son is a history buff. I love it that he's 23 and he's educating us on stuff. And we're looking at Africa. I mean, everything started in Africa. Mankind started in Africa. I mean, that's where it started.
That's true.
Yeah.
I've been studying African history myself because of this discovery in my DNA research, and I encourage everybody to do that.
That's fascinating.
Find your roots.
So Kenya. So we could be cousins, Henry, and we don't even know it. We have to figure this out.
I know, and we can. I'm sure we can. We can find it.
I love it. I love it.
The tools that are there, and I know that there are DNA companies that are Africa-centric, especially designed to guide people who were enslaved to be able to find their African roots, where specifically their people stem from, what tribes, down to the tribe. Race is a construct. Race is for economic gain, and nobody really talked in those terms before the Industrial Revolution, really. And you look at the countries of Africa, and the numbers of cultures within that continent.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Oh, it's fascinating. And you wonder, people think that, that Africa has these myths about it, there's, all these primitive tribes and different things. But gosh, I mean, the climate, the reason why there wasn't much developed in certain regions, especially around the equator, is because of this. It's hard to grow crops. I mean, they had to be very nomadic. And so you could roots and establish, all these infrastructures. I mean, only like in the northern part, you saw like near Egypt and different areas where they were able to do certain things agriculturally and, structurally and as far as building things. But yeah, I mean, there's a history and a reason why a lot of this stuff is. So this is interesting.
And we've been taught a very Eurocentric perspective of history, of world history.
Yes.
And if you actually go back to Greek and Roman history, and you dig deep, which I like to, you see that a lot of what we're seeing come from Europe is actually inspired by African people and nations. I'm a Patreon member of a wonderful YouTube channel that I encourage everybody, doesn't matter what background you come from. It's called Home Team History. Have you heard of this?
No, I need to look at that.
I'll send you the link. In fact, you know what? I'll post a link in the description here, both to that, and I'll post a link to your website, empoweringactions.com. I will put that in the description as well. As we're wrapping up here, and thank you so much for your time and energy and, the gift that is you. Very proud to call you friend.
Pleasure.
And think of three things that you would want our listeners to walk away from this episode with, three practical tools for their kit. They can't use these tools the way that we use them because they're our tools, but they can synthesize them with the tools they've already got. and they can help create unique tools for their own journey. What are three things that you can suggest practically that people can take away from this episode?
Get a gratitude journal, number one, and just to start to, there's something about, again, I've been talking about the mind and how the mind controls so much in how we live our life and everything, physical, mental, everything. But a gratitude journal is one way to help you maintain perspective that although life can be hard and we're going through an unprecedented challenge in American and just world history right now with this pandemic, we do have some control. And we can choose to have a heart and a mind of gratitude. And sometimes we just need some reminding that there are some good stuff happening around us. And so I love my every morning. And that's number one, a gratitude journal. And then number two, your vision, create a vision. And, I have my vision on my phone, my vision board where I've taken, first I wrote a narrative, a day in the life of Angela leading and living her best life. And just one day. And what does that look like? And it has to be so concise that you can touch, feel it, taste it, the whole thing. And so to be able to, create that vision and have it somewhere where it's visible, readily visible, because then you'll lose sight of it. And so that's one thing that I do. Another thing I do is I have an accountability partner, someone that keeps me accountable for my legacy producing activities. And these are just 5 areas, daily disciplines that I judge my success on, not hitting the home runs, but just am I engaged in these 5 areas every single day? Did I give myself a gold star? Did I engage in things that are important to me that I know compounded over time is going to lead me to leading and living my best life? And so having an accountability partner that I can just text and say, hey, I did it. I nailed it. I crushed it today. Is also good, because left to my own devices, as much as I know and as much as I coach and help people, left to my own devices, I had the propensity to do none of them, because I'm if one thing, I'm true to myself and I know what I'm capable of doing and not doing. And so it is important to have some accountability measures, do a coach or a friend or someone around you to help pull those things through.
Who is that for you? Is that a coach or a friend or your husband?
I have a coach. I learned the reason why I became a coach is because I know the value of having a coach. I will always have a coach because, again, left to my own devices, I probably will do maybe 10% of it, because I'm just keeping it real. That's why I've had a fair amount of success, but it's because I put things in place like having a coach in my life.
That's right. So listeners, if you are feeling like a lost traveler, which we all are right now, invest in a coach, invest in yourself. There are coaches at every level, whether it's professional, whether it's personal, whether it's parenting, whether it's grief that you're dealing with. If you're feeling like a lost traveler, there are coaches out there for you. Angela is one, I am one, and there are many, many others that we can point you towards.
Yes.
So do reach out. And Angela, my friend, thank you. This has been a joy and a pleasure. And
my pleasure.
Sometime there's so much more we could talk about.
Oh, I know. We're just getting started. And, I stepped outside because, my husband, we're all working. We actually live in Seattle, but we have a condo here in Scottsdale, and it's a 2-bedroom. And so we're like really short on space. And so we're always by for the primo spot that I started out in with our call. Now I've been relegated to outside sitting on the stairs.
I know. Well, listen, I'm in a remote village, and there have been 3 tractors that have gone by my front door. So, it is what it is. Real deal. I love that this conversation can be organic. I didn't prepare any questions. We just started the conversation just as real as can be. And look where it led us.
I just said, hey, if you're free, give me a call now. And no notes, no preconceived notions, nothing prepared. You didn't give me any talking points. We just had a great conversation. It was my pleasure being on your call today.
We'll do it again, and I look forward to the day where I can sit with you in person again and have raise a glass and really enjoy your company, because it's you're very special.
Absolutely.
In my life, I know you're
looking forward to it.
Mom's life too, and she adores you and looks up to you as well.
Oh, I love you both. This has been great. Thank you, Henry.
Okay, lots of love. Talk to you soon. Stay safe out there.
been listening to The Lost Traveler with Henry Cameron Allen. For more information, please visit www.henryallen.org. Thanks so much for tuning in, and let's all keep striving for a better world. Thank you.